Hello there, I'm Alex, and I sell cheese for a living. As a cheesemonger and certified cheese professional, I've helped thousands of customers find their favorite cheese. This week, we follow up on our Healthy Resolutions episode and dig into the less exciting world of cheese eating, when you can't eat cheese at all. Welcome back to the Modern Monger, podcast where we celebrate all things cheese. And today we're diving into what happens when cheese doesn't love you back. I'm talking lactose intolerance, milk protein allergies, A2 milk proteins, vegan cheeses, lactose-free options, nut milks, and basically how to keep the cheesy part of your life alive even if the cheese you're eating isn't really cheese at all. Let's start with lactose intolerance. Lactose is the sugar found in milk. And to digest it, your body needs an enzyme called lactase. Some people don't make enough lactase, so lactose sits in your gut where bacteria ferment it. If this sounds like a science experiment in your intestines, you'd be correct. Except there's gas, bloating, cramps. But here's the silver lining. Not all cheeses are equal. Hard, aged cheeses, Parmesan, cheddar, Gruyere, they have very little lactose left because the bacteria eating away during aging gobble up almost all the sugar. So for many lactose intolerant people, these cheeses are safe to enjoy. And if you are lactose intolerant, there are alternative methods you can take, some extra steps you can take that may help you still enjoy cheese. If it is just the lactase lacking in your stomach, you could take a product like a Lactaid, and it supplies lactase in your stomach. So as you eat the dairy and the lactose needs to be broken down, when taking that Lactaid with it, it recreates the natural lactase enzyme that is in most people's guts already. If we were to talk about milk protein allergies, this isn't a digestive issue. It's an immune reaction. Your body sees proteins like casein or whey as a threat, and it attacks them. Symptoms can range from mild rashes to serious anaphylaxis. This is no joke. Some cheeses are more allergenic than others. Cow milk is the most common trigger, but goat and sheep milk cheeses can also cause reactions if your immune system cross-reacts. Basically, switching species isn't a guaranteed fix. You have to pay attention to your own body. And here's a twist that might be new to some of you. A1 versus A2 beta-casein proteins. Most cows produce A1 milk, which may cause digestive discomfort in certain people, even if they aren't technically lactose intolerant. A2 milk comes from specific breeds like Guernsey or Jersey cows and have a slightly different protein structure. Many people report that A2 milk and cheeses made from it feel easier on the gut. It's not a magic solution, but for some mild sensitivity, it is worth experimenting with. Some aged cheeses are even labeled as A2 friendly. Finally, some other sensitivities: goat, sheep, and even camel milk. Rare but possible, and cross-reactivity with cow's milk proteins can surprise you. The key takeaway: no one-size-fits-all solution exists. You should keep a cheese diary if you want to keep track of what works and what doesn't. And what about the folks with allergies that aren't technically dairy, like gluten, soy, or nuts? Do they need to worry about cheese too? Well, let's break it down. Gluten. Most traditional cheeses are naturally gluten-free. Hard cheeses, soft cheeses, and fresh cheeses are usually safe. The main risk is if a cheese is flavored or processed with additives, seasonings, or coatings that contain gluten. For example, some flavored shredded cheeses or cheese spreads could have wheat-based ingredients. But again, more traditional cheeses are going to be gluten-free. Soy itself isn't in dairy cheeses, so traditional cheese is safe again. But if you're turning to vegan cheeses, soy is common as a base. Think tofu, soy protein, soy milk. People with soy allergies need to read labels carefully. If you have an allergy to tree nuts or peanuts, again, traditional dairy cheeses are safe. But nut allergies come into play heavily with vegan cheeses, especially cashew or almond-based cheeses. If eggs concern you, they rarely would be seen in standard cheeses. Some specialty cheeses, though, especially processed spreads or baked cheeses, could include egg-derived stabilizers or coatings. If you are a shellfish or fish allergen person, most cheeses are safe here, but some artisanal cheeses or flavor infused cheeses might include unexpected additives. Always check labels or ask for producer notes. The big takeaway here, if your allergy isn't specifically dairy, cheese is usually fine. But processed cheeses, vegan cheeses, or flavored varieties can introduce other allergens. So, label reading is still king. And of course, if you have multiple allergies, proceed very carefully and consider keeping a tasting diary or an allergen log. We've talked about vegan cheeses a few times now. Let's get into it. How are they made? What makes a vegan cheese vegan, and how does it even exist? Unlike dairy cheeses, vegan cheese don't start with milk. They start with plants, nuts, soy, coconut, or even root vegetables like potatoes and carrots. Here's a small breakdown of the process. At the base creation, most vegan cheeses start with a plant base. Cashews are the most common because when soaked and blended, they turn creamy and neutral tasting, which is a perfect canvas. Almonds, macadamias, soybeans, and coconuts also work here for the base. Next, we add cultures and ferment the product. To give vegan cheeses that signature tang and complexity, some producers use bacterial cultures, similar to traditional cheese making. They might add probiotics or cheese-specific bacteria to develop flavor and a slightly sour note, mimicking the aging process of regular dairy cheese. Now that we have fermented the product, we would probably thicken it. Since plant bases don't have the proteins of milk, vegan cheeses need stabilizers to create that cheese-like feel. Agar, tapioca starch, or even modified starches help achieve stretchiness or firmness. When it comes to flavoring, this is where the magic happens. Nutritional yeast, miso, smoked paprika, garlic, or lactic acid can be added to replicate the savory umami punch of real cheese. Cashew cheeses often rely on fermentation plus acid for that authentic tang. Now, as an optional step, you can age the cheese or culture it. Some artisanal vegan cheeses are aged for weeks to develop more complex flavor, sometimes wrapped in leaves or wax like traditional cheeses. Others are quick culture soft cheeses, perfect for spreads or melting. And speaking of melting, modern vegan cheeses often include ingredients that mimic the protein-fat interaction in dairy cheeses, so they melt convincingly. Tapioca starch is the superstar here. When heated, it stretches and becomes gooey, giving you a pizza-worthy melt without a drop of dairy. And the result? There's a growing variety of cheeses that are creamy, tangy, and meltable, even to satisfy cravings for spreads, pizza, mac and cheese, or fancy cheese boards. And for allergy-prone or dairy-free eaters, they are life-changing. They can bring cheese back into your diet if you learned that you are unable to eat regular cow's milk cheese or sheep's milk cheese ever again. And here is a quick aside. Legally and biologically, nut milks aren't milk. Milk, by definition, comes from mammals. Almond, cashew, and other plant-based milks are technically beverages, not dairy milk. That doesn't make them bad. It just means that when a recipe calls for milk, using nut milk changes the protein, the fat, and the texture content. So yes, you can make a vegan mac and cheese with almond milk, but it is a slightly different beast than the cow milk original. Think of it as a cheese-flavored adventure instead of a perfect one-to-one replication. Most recipes that deviate from traditional cow's milk with a nut-based substitution will need some kind of additional modification to the recipe to make up the difference in the nutrients lost. This is a good time to also say, as much as we are talking about vegan cheeses and alternatives to lactose intolerance or milk allergies, this is a touchy subject in the cheese world. Many people still believe that unless it comes from a cow, it is not cheese. And I am looking at it more through a lens of how do I help my customers feel fulfilled and satisfied with their diet and with their purchases. And if that means we deviate a little bit from traditional cow's milk cheeses to a vegan cheese and they take it home and they have an excellent time with it, I'm not really going to butt heads with the definition of what is and what is not a cheese. I do believe cheese should be milk-based, but if it makes someone happy and it tastes similar enough and they can continue on with their life, then I'm going to call it whatever my customer prefers it to be called. Just be careful when you're talking about this topic with some of your friends or coworkers. Some people have very strong opinions on this, so be ready. And for those who want real dairy without the lactose, there are lactose-free cheeses, and that would be a good answer. Lactase enzyme breaks down lactose during production, letting lactose intolerant folks enjoy cheddar, mozzarella, or cream cheese without the digestive side effects. Many people report no discomfort, making this an easy entry point back into classic cheesy favorites. Now, cheese flavor doesn't have to come from dairy at all. Nutritional yeast, powdered cheese flavors, plant-based cheese sauces, or roasted chickpeas with cheesy seasoning can scratch that cheesy itch safely. My big takeaway here, even if you can't handle dairy, you can explore cheese culture, recipes, and flavor without paying the price on your intestines. And here's a quick way to kind of navigate cheese without so much chaos if you are exploring what you're able to eat with your allergies or your intolerance. I would start small. Try a tiny amount of aged cheese or lactose-free cheese to see how your body reacts. Keep a diary, keep a journal, whatever you want, and track what you're feeling up to 24 hours after you eat the cheese. You can also mix and layer, blend alternative and traditional cheeses together to enjoy flavor while staying comfortable. And if you're out at a restaurant, ask a lot of questions, Cross-contamination exists, and not every restaurant is super focused on making sure that is separate, because for the majority of people, it's not an issue. But it's always worth asking, was this prepared in a safe and sterile environment, or is there some cross-contamination existing behind the doors? And if you're looking to satisfy that cheesy itch, you can explore some fermented options. You can look at miso or kimchi. There are a few other umami-rich foods that can satisfy that flavor craving without being explicitly dairy. Before we wrap up, I want to zoom out for a second because, we've spent this whole episode talking about what people can't eat: lactose intolerance, allergies, sensitivities, vegan diets, and I don't want this episode to end with anyone feeling like cheese is something to be taken away from them. Because what's actually happening right now is the opposite. For most of history, cheese has made for a very specific body, a body that could digest lactose, a body that didn't react to milk proteins, a body that had access to dairy animals and the culture around them. If your body didn't fit that mold, the answer was basically, well, that's a bummer. Guess cheese isn't for me. And honestly, that's wild when you think about it, because cheese, I've said this before, isn't just food. It's celebration, it's comfort, it's culture. It's the thing in the middle of a grazing table that makes people linger a little bit longer. So when we talk about lactose-free cheeses or A2 dairy or vegan cheese or cheese-flavored foods, this isn't about replacing real cheese. I think it's about access. What we're seeing right now is cheese being made for more bodies, not fewer. For the person who loves cheese but doesn't love how cheese loves them back, and for the person who found out at 35 that dairy was the reason that they felt awful all the time, for the person with allergies who still wants to be part of the cheese board moment, and for the vegan who misses the ritual of slicing, spreading, melting, and sharing, this isn't dilution, it's expansion. And yeah, not every vegan cheese tastes amazing. Not every lactose-free cheese melts perfectly. Not every alternative is trying to be a one-to-one replacement, but cheese has always been like that. Even traditional cheese is a massive spectrum. Fresh cheese, aged cheese, bloomy rinds, washed rinds, mild crowd pleasers. Some people love blue cheese. Some people think it tastes horrible. We've never demanded that all cheese be one thing, so why should we start now? If anything, this current moment on cheese is one of the most exciting we've ever had. We've got people applying fermentation knowledge to plants. We have cheesemakers rethinking proteins and enzymes. We have scientists, artisans, and home cooks all asking the same question: how do we make something delicious that more people can enjoy? And I really think that matters, because food shouldn't be a punishment. It shouldn't be a test. It shouldn't be something you're anxious about every time you sit down at a table with friends at a restaurant. cheese should feel welcoming. And the cool thing is, you don't have to pick a side. You don't have to be dairy forever or plant-based only. You can love aged cheddar and a great cashew spread. You can eat lactose-free mozzarella on pizza and still geek out over traditional Alpine cheeses. You can build a cheese board that has dairy, vegan, and allergen-friendly options and make everyone feel included. That's not compromise. That's called hospitality. So if you're listening to this episode because cheese hurts your stomach or makes you sick or just doesn't work for you in the way it used to, I hope the takeaway here isn't really grief, but more a curiosity. Because there has never been a better time to explore cheese on your terms than right now. To recap, cheese can still be a part of your life, even if lactose, milk proteins, or other sensitivity try to stop you. You should explore vegan or lactose-free cheeses, consider A2 proteins, and even understand that nut milks aren't real milk, but don't be afraid to experiment with cheese-flavored foods. I believe truly that everyone has a seat at the table when cheese is involved, and it doesn't have to be just those of us who can handle dairy. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Modern Monger. My name's Alex, and I hope you can eat something cheesy this week.